Hello, it's almost 7. Look at this, I'm on time. I'm even ahead of schedule. That is so exciting. I tried to make sure I was on time today. I think you've got a good view of my desktop other than the ring reflection from the ring light's a little bit annoying. But otherwise, I think it looks good. Hello, Mother. Good to see you. Now that you're all shot up with your anti-COVID vaccine, yay. I have some smooth jazz playing in the background. Let me know if it gets to be too obnoxious and we can tell Google to shut it off, but that it would be good. So we'll get started in a moment. Today we're going to try some watercolor. Mom, you'll like this because I'm going to do some gesso. Or I've done some gesso, clear gesso, so we can see how it works. While we're waiting, I grabbed a couple things. Oh good, we have one more person while we're waiting. We'll give it like one more minute. I wanted to show you some of the things I've been working on. So one thing I've been hoping to do is to get a full deck of cards altered for altered playing card full deck challenge. That goes to the end of the year. I thought if I did one card a year or one card a week, I'd get them done. But I just don't do these cards in a 1 week, plan. So I did a bunch of them. And these are actually, I saw this on Facebook and I'm trying it. And you know, let's try it Tuesday. So we'll talk about what I tried. These are cards. I think I showed the deck one other time. I think Mom, you got me this is a Potawatomi deck. And book pages. And I actually cut up the card into pieces and put it on book pages. These are 2 pages glued together to give it a little bit more thickness. And there's some washi on here, some stickers. So here's just kind of what I've done. And I'll sew them, I think, is my plan. But actually before I sew them, because the backs are kind of plain, I thought I might do some napkin, decoupage napkin on the back, or rice paper too. I have rice paper rather than just plain words. So what do you think, Mom? What do you think? Should I decorate the back or keep it plain? Maybe I'll do a mix of them. I don't know. And then I'll sew them kind of around the little card symbols. And then these will be great to just use as little fillers in junk journals and scrapbooks and things. Decorate. Okay. Yes, I have lots of napkins and lots of decoupage, so I can easily decoupage, and then you can actually see the ink, the words through it. So that's an easy one. I could also do some watercolor painting or inking on the back if I really wanted to just add that kind of texture, so I've got lots of options. This one has cardstock on the back. There's a couple with cardstock, but mostly it's book pages because I have lots of book pages from books I pulled apart. And then I also wanted to show you the beads. So I was working on those paper beads, and I did get my Judykins diamond glaze, not the other diamond glaze that I had that was wrong. So I got the Judykins. I got a nice big bottle of it, and then I got a little nail polish bottle from Amazon. And this was like 3 coats of Judykins. You can see they're nice and shiny. And they look really good. And then I have another set I'm starting to wrap now. So, there you go. I made good progress. I had to show you. So with that, let's try some watercolor. So we had somebody on here for a second, Mom, but now it's just back to me and you, which is fine. When we think about watercolor, there's lots of interesting things to know about watercolor. Let me actually add some more light over here. So watercolor doesn't have to just be your traditional watercolor tray. Whether it's this fancy kind of a tray with lots of color options, or your Crayola one you buy when it's, you know, time for back to school, doesn't matter. Watercolor, this is what people think of traditionally when they think about watercolor. But there's lots of other options. There's also watercolor pencils. I have 2 sets of watercolor pencils. This is the very first set I got decades ago, and then I have a more complete set. Now, watercolor pencils work nice for coloring even. If you like a softer pencil lead, the watercolor pencils work really nice for just that soft lead if you really want some soft lead and blending. But these also, when you put them on paper, they will, if you add water, blend out like a watercolor. So there's another option. There's also these are gessos, not gessos. Yeah, gelatos. That's the word I'm looking for. Gelatos. So gelatos you could put right on a piece of paper and then add some water and blend them out. I could also put it on here, pick it up with water. So there's lots of options with gelatos. We'll work on this, Mom. I know I got you some gelatos, so I can try these so you can kind of see how they work. So I'll keep those close by here. If you watched last week, which I know you did, Mom, you can also do watercolor with regular water-based marker, right? I put it right on here, colored with it. You can also color on a rubber stamp and stamp it down. I want to do that too to show you how that works. So that's a fun option. You can also do, this is like my fancy watercolor blending here. These lights just don't want to cooperate in a way that I like. Fancy watercolor. So these are mica powders. Okay, they're like a shiny powder. Again, I bought these decades ago. They last forever. I can use them like I did with the Pan Pastel on Versamark. So I could stamp with Versamark and this would stick to it just like a Pan Pastel would. Or you can mix them into all kinds of other things. Mom, you've never tried watercolor pencils. Oh, do you have them? They're super fun. We'll have to try those too. But these pigment powders, you can see here some remnants of some. I've actually taken them. I can put a little bit in there with this gum arabic and water. And the gum arabic's not cheap. This is 15 bucks for this little bottle. But it lasts, again, a long, long, long time. And the gum arabic is what allows it to kind of dry like a watercolor paint would. And then when I add water, it just reactivates. So there's another way you can kind of do make it your own kind of watercolor. I dropped one on the ground. Then I also have, if you like shimmers, I have these. Lindy's makes these really cool shimmer watercolors, and they're in a powder form. There's a few companies that make these kind of powdered form watercolor options. Lindy's is one. I like theirs because it's very, very sparkly, and I like sparkly. But there's also, I think, Ken Oliver has powdered watercolor too. There might be others, but those are the two that come to mind. Ken Oliver has one that's more shimmery, but generally his are just straight up watercolor, but in this powder form. And that allows you to kind of make it as strong or weak as you want. And there's some other cool things that these do that maybe we'll go through. Then also there's these glimmer mists. So these are different sprays. Tattered Angels is the brand that I happen to have, but there's lots of other ones. Again, you could spray it on a surface and add a little water to it and paint with it. So something that you might not ordinarily think is a watercolor that you could use as a watercolor. You can even add water to inks. Now, Distress Oxide ink, this is an interesting one with water, I think. I could put this down and pick it up with water and paint with it, and it'll paint kind of a chalkier color. Works really well on darker paper, the oxide specifically. If I use the regular Distress non-oxide, that would work like any other kind of fusion or a hybrid ink. I brought a few of those over here as well. And one of the first things, you probably can't see it because of the way the lid is, but one of the first things that it says on here, let's put a piece of paper behind it, right? Watercolor. Watercolor, right there. So these, again, I could take this and stamp it down and pick it up with water and paint with it. So lots and lots and lots of options for watercolor that you could try. You can even use acrylic paint if you really wanted to and water it down. I think that would work fine too. So lots of choices. So now let's do some watercolor. First, I think I'll show you some background stuff, because backgrounds take a long time to dry anyway. This is a cutting board that I actually got from a former employer of mine. They had changed the bank name and gave away all their stuff. And so I have this little cutting board. And this tip of taking the paper and taping it down onto the cutting board to keep it from warping, that's the reason, to keep it from warping. I actually got that from, I think Paige Evans had done this. And I've never tried it before, even though I had this cutting board up here for that reason. So this will be fun to try this today. And again, it's largely to get rid of warping. Now I have lots of different brushes over here for painting. I have one in my watercolor thing here. I've got this one. I've got a cup of water here. I am using my little ashtray thing to help me kind of rinse and pick up water. I have a water brush too, so I've got all kinds of brushes here on hand to kind of play around with. And I thought we could do the Lindy's first, because these make fun backgrounds. And then I could go in later and stamp on it, or use it as a card background. This is kind of a card background size, what have you. And then for paper, I'll show you real quick what paper I have. So for this paper that I have down here, it is this Artist Loft watercolor pad. It's 130 pound 9x12, and I just cut it into quarters, and that gave me 6 by 4.5, which is a good card front size with some excess. But I also have, if we get an opportunity to try it later, there's a Strathmore, a cold press watercolor. This is their 400 series, same size, same weight, but it has, I think, a little more tooth to it. If I look at the texture, it's a little more bumpy. And of course, with watercolor, you have two options when you use sides, or any of these colored pads. So there's this pad that's more textured, the side, and then the back is more smooth, and you could really use either, just depending on what you're trying to do. So there we go. Let's do these Lindy's. Now there's a couple ways you can use Lindy's. What I think I'll try first for fun is just put some water down on the paper here. This is early trying it. I've not tried this before, so we'll see what happens. And then put the powder. It has two different openings, one that's like a salt shaker and one that's just like a massive thing. Right, and then you just sprinkle the Lindy's down where it's wet, and the water's going to kind of pick it up and blend it out. And if I don't have enough water, I can always add more with the brush. I could add more with a sprayer. There we go. Now you can kind of see how that looks. Isn't that cool? And then there's some little spots where it needs just a little bit of blending. So I'll kind of blend that in. And I would say this particular watercolor paper doesn't feel super absorbent, but that's okay. All right, let's put some water down here. I didn't clean my brush off very well, I see. This should be my cleaning cup, and this is my water grabbing cup here. But the beauty of watercolor too is that if I say there's too much yellow in there, I can kind of dab it up a little bit. But it's all about blending, so I'm okay with it. And then let's go. I'm trying to kind of go lighter to darker here. This is a pink color. Oompa Pink, it's called. So let's put some of that down. And I always just like how it just kind of gets grabbed up by the water and spreads out. Rinse it. Let's put a nice good blob of water right there. Let's put some green, I think, actually here. There we go. this soaks in a little bit, I can add some other colors to it too, right? Let's blend this out a little bit more. There we go. I don't know if you can kind of see kind of the different colors within the color. I think you can see it pretty well in here. There's like blues, and it's just really cool. All right, and I think the paper needs to be really nice and wet for this to work the best. So I'm going to add more water to it. There we go. If it starts to get too wet, I'm just going to dab that up a little bit because that's too runny. I can put a little more green in here. It is like magic. The magicals are magic. You're so funny, Mom. There we go. Ooh, there. Now it's coming along. Let me get, I got some extra water kind of sitting on here. I have paper towel too, which might work better for soaking some of this up. Let me get that. There we go. Okay, and let's add some of this. This is Guten Tag Teal. This is a really pretty one. I don't ever seem to open the right end first. There we go. See, you can just see how it kind of spreads and gets really cool looking. Let's put a little orange up there. All right, so this is a watercolor that doesn't require like super artist skill. This is just watercolor that makes a fun background, and you can try things and be creative, and it just makes super cool effects without, you know, any kind of hazard. Hey, I got that one right. I think I might be learning the secret. That's really pretty. Let's add a little bit of blue on here. There we go. So see, that's going to have some really funky effects. That'll be a really cool background when it dries. And if after it dries, there's still some spots of paint that are dry, I can always spray more water on and soften it up if I want to. See, and this just kind of helps to prove like watercolor doesn't have to be this super strict, how do I paint inside the lines kind of an exercise. You can do it and just have fun. And I really like these for the fun factor. There's this blob of water right here, and I really just want to get some of this paint in it. This is a brown. So I'm not going to use a lot of it, but I use the brown a lot when I'm doing kind of my junk journals. If I want them to have kind of a rustic look, I use the brown instead of the bold color like I have on here. Let's just soak up a little bit of that excess water from the edges where I have some pooling. There we go. See? Pretty cool. And if I turned this, you can see this table has a little bit of a slant to it. So if I turn it this way a little bit and even add just a hair more water from a distance, and then have it this way, that'll bring some of this down that way too, which I think will be, again, really cool. Did you ever notice sometimes I say I'm done and then I do more stuff? So that's just the way it is. Okay, so that's going to be a cool background. And I'm going to set that over here. You can and kind of dry. I'm going to give it, again, that little bit of an angle. Oh, it's still, there's a little bit of wetness on there that I don't want to get all over. I'll put it on a little bit of an angle so it can do some more of that running. It actually needs a tiny bit more water right here. There we go. Cool. Okay. So that's a really easy, like, no fancy stuff watercolor. Then let's do some actual watercolor. Now this particular thing, this is just plain old white copy paper. It's a decent quality, but not like the most expensive. And I put clear gesso on it. So this is the clear gesso that I'm using. A little bit goes a long way. It actually, Mom, for you to know, it comes out really fast. I ended up putting like a penny size blob on here and it was too much. So watch out, it comes out fast. Try to be gentle with it and sparing with it. I spread it out with the old bank, like credit card, gift card thing and let it dry. So I did it on the back. Ordinarily, I think you do it on the front, but I just wanted to see how this paper would work otherwise. With just the gesso on the back to keep it from getting too warpy and soaked in. So let me, I'm putting all my brushes are getting discombobulated here. Okay, so let's do some quick watercolor pencil. And as I said, I have 2 sets of these. This is the very first set I ever got. And it works just fine, but I also have, I'll get it out here, I think. Yeah. I also have an Arteza set, 72 colors. So certainly more colors. And I did that because this doesn't have a lot, and some of them I feel like we're getting a little old, but that's fine. Okay. So what usually I do is I color in kind of the parts that I think I'd want to have be the darkest kind of accent areas, right? The lines. These go really good if you're doing like a no line watercolor. I could, especially on this table, like this table, right? It lights up from behind. So I could actually have this and put a piece of paper over it and just color or draw it with the pencil and you wouldn't see any lines. Now this, this is foil. I did some foiling. So I'm just gonna, I thought it'd be really cool to do watercolor with foil. So that's what I'm doing. Right, and just, you know, like color the parts that I think are gonna be the darkest, and then I'll end up pulling the paint forward, and that's gonna give me some of that light and dark texturizing. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect because once you put the water on, it kind of blends out. And I like to start with the lightest. I'll use my watercolor pencil, I guess, just because. That's actually too wet. There we go. It's like the story of my work today. It's just, these are all too wet. Get my, not drying very well. Okay. See, and that's why you try things. There we go. I squeeze the watercolor pencil, or the water brush. That's what it is that I'm using. I squeezed it too much. Okay. There we go. So just kind of blend that in. All right, pick it up and move it. Pull it down. It's just a way to kind of color and blend. So if you have watercolor pencils, these are great for that. Like I said, they're really good for coloring too. If I go with this, let's add some brown on the wings here once. I think you'll be able to see that really well. All right, add some color, some shading on these wings. fine, right? I'm not doing this whole big need to stain the lines, fussy stuff. I'm just kind of saying here's the areas that I think would be darker, putting the watercolor pencil on there, and then I kind of pick it up and blend it forward. And that softens where it is, and it gives me that shading. And if there's a spot that needs more, I can always go back and get more. That's a really easy way to add like that really fancy watercolor look. Well, and it is watercolor, but without having to do all the detail, you know, with the pot and back and forth. Right, and I could always pick up more and add it in if I wanted to as I go through it. Right, and I really like on the feathers to kind of add right texture in here, some gradient. Like there's spots where it's just going to be really dark and I'm going to lay that down heavy, and then some other texture, right? Just like that. And pull that down. It's a little bit too wet again, but that's okay. You always keep paper towel handy when you're doing watercolor. That's my tip. Especially when you're using a water brush, because it's easy for them to get too wet. And just a little dab on the paper towel resolves all of that. Or if you're doing like backgrounds like I did, sometimes they get too wet and you just you get a look that you want, and then you want to stop it from continuing to be wet and spreading out, and so you would use some paper towel to absorb that. There we go. See, I think that's pretty. It's got some nice texture, right, without me having to do lots of fancy, time-consuming watercolor. Oh, the water brush is apparently leaking because I've got water on it. Alright, so nice. Easy. So see, Mom, you could do this. You could totally do this. Not complicated. And the watercolor pencils, like I said, are nice even if you're just coloring and you want some good blending. Like if I go... Let me do a little bit here and just kind of show you. If I wanted to add some blending in, kind of as I get to this main body part, I have this kind of, it's more of a peach. It's not necessarily the ideal color, but I can kind of blend that in a little bit as I'm getting out into the body part. Right, then blend that in. I could add a little more dark there to it and say, well, this is just a blend. Right, a little bit less maybe here. All right, add some here, and then maybe I put some red in here. Make it more of a red-breasted kind of bird. Let's give it a little bit of color. Add a little brown here. All right, and as far as coloring goes, like this just looks kind of sloppy. But once you start pulling the color around, it starts to look much nicer. So let's just do a little bit of that real quick. Pull this down and in over here. Just kind of color that wing in a little bit more, add a little bit of color there, right? And you can sometimes even pick it up from the spot, from a different spot, and move it. If I found there was an area that I already painted that needed a little bit more, when I get it wet, sometimes I can just get that color on the brush and toss a little more down there, which I've even been doing, and you probably haven't even noticed. Right, I'm just gonna pull that kind of up and down and in. Right, and blend it through. Like I said, this is just copy paper that I put some gesso on the back to keep it from getting too warpy. So nothing fancy. This is not fancy watercolor paper. I'd probably have even better effects if I was using watercolor paper, but I had this cool laser foiled image that I just really wanted to paint. And so here it is. See, look at that. That's coming along. I know there are so many cool options, Mom. All right, so I'll let that dry, but I think that's really cool. That's going to be one I'll definitely finish. I really like that. So that's watercolor pencil, except I think I put the tray back in the box upside down because all my pencils are going to fall out the way I just put it in. Oh, that's funny. And now I can't get it back up. All right. There we go. Make sure you put your tray in the right way if you get this type of pencil. There we go. Okay. So I think that looked pretty cool. Could you use the watercolor pencils and water over the gesso? I think so. So let's try that, Mom. This is a book page. It's a thicker page, thicker quality. Not as thick as a watercolor paper. It has a little tooth to it, right, because it's a book page. And this I did, again, the gesso on here. Let it dry. It's dried. So let's just see what happens if we do, let me get my other pencils. Just because why not? And let's see what happens if we do the watercolor pencil over the gesso. I would think we should be able to do this without any kind of problem. So let's just see here. So I'll color this in a little bit. And I think this would be really cool to do. So there's lots of lines in here, and I'm just feeling like it'd be really cool to do like a sunset kind of texture on here with the pencil. Right, and then I can add, since I have it open to the kind of yellows and goldens and browns right now, let's just kind of go with that, right? We'll get this fabulous kind of sunsetty blend, I'm hoping, or sun rising, whatever this is, blend. Right, and I think that would be really super cool. Right here, I'm just kind of blending the pencil together. So this is kind of the effect you'd get if you just colored with them. So like I said, they blend. I think they blend a little bit better than standard colored pencil, personally. Right, just color it out, right? Add this pretty orange in here. It's gonna be really fabulous, I think. There, let's add a little bit of this kind of pinky red in here too, just a little bit. Kind of coming in from the bottom. Sometimes that's how those beautiful sunrises work. As you get closer to the ground is usually where the darkness and the lightness kind of blend and conflict with each other to give us those amazing sunset colors, right? Right, I'll add just a couple streaks kind of coming up in. And let's do a little bit of, I've got this really light pink too that might be pretty. And just a little bit of that kind of coming up from some of these spots that still need some color. Like that. Definitely need some here, and then maybe just a touch of, let's do a tiny, tiny touch of blue. I'm debating on what color blue I want to use. Maybe just a little bit right down here. Let's just see. Let's see how this turns out. There we go. So this was the Arteza watercolor pencils. Laid down on a book page that I've gessoed on. So let's see what happens here. I'm gonna actually use it's a regular brush this time, not the water brush, but I could certainly use the water brush. I kind of like how the water brush works, actually. It holds, for this particular technique, I feel like it holds the water better for blending. It kind of gives me that consistent water supply, which I might like a little bit more. But this still works. It's now too wet. So let's go. Let's just go back to the water brush. I think I like it better. Okay. Now I'm going to, although this one's kind of fine pointed, maybe that's why I don't like it on this. I think I have a thicker one somewhere too, but just to figure out how much water I actually want to use. Oh, there we go. I think that's really quite lovely. I'm just kind of picking up the color and moving it in pieces here. Rinsing off the brush a little bit in between because I don't want it to get any of the color too much, or that'll kind of defeat the look I'm going for. And I'm pulling from the bottom up because if I went from the top down, I feel like I'd get, again, that yellow from the sun and it would all just kind of blend together, which I'm kind of trying to avoid. It's just not the look I'm going for. I could have just put the color way down low and pulled from the sun down, but this is just the look I'm going for. And this is working, I think, really pretty well. Doing the gesso with the colored pencil. That was a little bit too much water, but I've got my paper towel so I can tap it up a little bit if I want to. And then add a little more water and blend it in. There we go. I don't want the look to be so wet, again, that I lose the kind of color and texture that I'm trying to achieve. I'm going to grab a little bit more of this red, I think, and pull it up. And it's just with watercolor. I mean, it's really a try it when you do watercolor, because even if you're using watercolor paper, like what they coat it with and the thickness and the tooth, all of them just make each experience a little bit different. How much water you use, what kind of technique you're trying to do. So I always recommend just trying it, trying different techniques, trying out different papers, you know, and give yourself the ability to try things and make mistakes and just learn, because with watercolor especially, I feel like there's so many things that can impact how your piece turns out that you just have to try some things. There we go. What do you think, Mom? I think that turned out pretty cool. Some nice blending. I still feel like, oh, I want this red. I don't know what happened to my video here. I still feel like I want the red blended out a little more. 1 second. I think my computer power ran out for some reason. Let's see what happened. There it is. It doesn't like me right now, but we'll give it a minute. I'll be back. But hopefully you liked that. I think that turned out cool. Let's do a little bit of using, because I know you have these too, Mom, of these gelatos. I just want to try a couple of these. I want to spend a ton of time on it. See if the computer can come back to. I think it just thought I was done or something, because it shouldn't be the battery. It's all plugged in. If we take the, let's do the red and the brown. Just putting a blop on here. And this glass mat works really well for this. Mom, I know you have your granite countertop would work really well too. I don't know why my computer is just behaving so strangely right now, so I apologize. I have no idea why it turned off. And now it's back on, but it's just giving me a plain screen, which isn't really what I wanted. So let's do this barn a little bit so I can pick up the color. This is almost a little more pinky than what I wanted, but I have some brown here too. So let me make this a little bit more reddish brown. Right, and I'm just picking it up and using it as a watercolor. Right, just kind of blending it out. There's a little bit more brown in there, I think. And this again is on the gessoed book page. So I think that is pretty cool. That works really well. Well, I don't know what's happening with my computer, so I apologize. I won't be able to see your comments now, which is really annoying. I don't know what the deal is with the computer. It was fine, and now it doesn't want to cooperate for whatever reason. Even though I know it's plugged in, so it should have plenty of power. But yeah, so look at that. Right, and I can just paint with that. It'll dry nice. Take more of this and make this sidewalk here just brown. This has a little bit of even shimmer to it. I think the ones I got you too, Mom, have a little bit of shimmeriness, which is nice. It's not overly shimmery, but there's some shimmer in it. Alright, so these work really nice. I like this effect a lot. Right, and I'm using a good amount of water. That one especially has a lot of water in it. And it wouldn't have to have that much water, but that's just how I did it. Let's do this other barn here, and then we'll say we're done with this. But this is cool. This would be fun in a journal or just even hanging up, right? It would be cool. So there's, right, again, you don't have to do super fancy stuff to get cool results. And that's on paper with the gesso. And then one of the reasons for the gesso is it keeps it from soaking through too much. This is a really thick paper. It'd be really absorbent. So it works out really well. Like that was really wet, and you can see a couple little water spots, but overall not a lot of seepage. So the gesso is doing what I would hope that it would do. And then just for the heck of it, I have another book page from the same book. And let's just get this paper towel and wipe this up real quick. Let's just do some watercolor on this without the gesso, so we can see what the difference is, right? It's a benefit, I think, to try different things and see what the effect is. One thing I've seen people do is kind of watercolor through a stencil. Never tried it. Today's Try It Tuesday. Let's give it a whirl, right? I'll use my regular watercolors for this. And grab this brush. I'm trying to not leave them sitting in that cup, but I keep obviously forgetting. And this will be really abstract. So this won't be crisp with the stencil. It just won't be. It can't be because watercolor is so watercolory. But this will be interesting just to kind of see. And I could, again, tape it down. I could, in fact, let me do that. Put some pixie spray on here real quick. And the pixie spray is to help hold the stencil down even a little bit, so it sticks a tiny bit. That might make it a little bit crisper. So it'll be fun. Let's just try it. It's like a removable adhesive, essentially. So again, just try it. That's what Try It Tuesday's for. Right, and I saw somebody do this with like this really fabulous kind of watercolor technique like this with this butterfly stencil, and I bought the butterfly stencil. It's really big, so I'm not using it today. I just wanted to use something small so I could fit it on the desk with all the other kind of clutter I have on here right now. But it definitely, once I kind of see how this goes, I'm definitely going to watch his video again and try it again. See, now my computer's powered itself back up for some unknown reason, but I still don't have the screen where I can enter my code in. So who knows? We'll just let it do its thing. I'm sure there was some kind of update or who knows what that it's decided to do on me here. And again, this is pretty abstract, just like earlier technique I did with the kind of layering thing, right? This isn't anything fancy. Ooh, and I'll show you that layering thing too. It looks like it's drying, turned out pretty cool. So I'll make sure I show that before I go. How about some red? What do we think? I think red would look good. All right, I'm just blending and dabbing, and like I said, it's gonna, I think, leak through in a variety of places. This stencils with the spray glue might give it a little bit better result, a little less seepage, but who knows? We'll see. This is just to try it, and again, there's no gesso on here either, so I'm expecting it will soak in quick. It doesn't have as much kind of setting time usually, or I guess blending time is the word I'm looking for. It doesn't have usually as much blending time when you're not on the gesso, and usually I would expect that it's going to seep through versus having the gesso. I think I need a darker blue maybe. And with watercolor paint, even though I have this tray of all kinds of colors, you can see this top part here, this is blending. So even with that, I often blend a color right in the lid here. And then if it gets too blended out and messy, I can always just go back and wipe it, spray it, wipe it, or even wash it in the sink, and then go back and do more. Those are all kind of colors I've mixed with the existing colors. Okay, there we go. And there's a really cool technique. I want to call it bokeh. I don't know if that's right or if that's not the right pronunciation, but it's actually where you would take maybe a shape like this. Ooh, see how cool that turned out? See, now my computer's turned back off. Right, so I take that, and then once that dries, I would put the stencil back down again and just kind of repeat layers with that. This stencil might be a little more detailed than what you would generally use, but I could use, so I also have this butterfly one. I have 2 pieces of it, but I could just use this butterfly shape. Might be too big, right? But then you just do this shape over and over and layer. And it turns out really cool. I've seen it done with circles, which I always thought was really cool. Right, and I thought this might be big enough where I could do that if I wanted to. And just kind of layer on top of layer. See how we're almost out of time. Wow, where does the time go? But so that's cool. That's doing it through a stencil, right? Awesome stuff. Then I wanted to really quickly, first let me show you this so I don't forget. So here's what we did at the beginning. Still a little bit of water right here. Let's get that soaked up. But look how cool that turned out. Right, kind of rainbowy. It's got shimmer. You probably can't tell, but it's got shimmer. It's got all these fun and funky colors in it. I think it turned out really cool. That'd be an awesome background or a pocket, or I could make a tag out of it for a journal. Just all kinds of cool stuff. All right, so one last thing I think I want to do, just real quick before we're done, is, and Mama, I had told you about this technique too, is the watercolor stamping. So these, they call them watercolor stamps. This is Artistic Impressions. It doesn't have to be their stamp. It could be any kind of stamp. But they walk you through on here exactly how to do all this. They even give you color, sepia color numbers if you want to get that fussy. I'm not going to get that fussy, and I'm not going to do this whole thing. But I thought I could show you how it works. So they say start with the brown using Prussian blue and the roof with sepia 45. So, and I don't have these, my markers are not color coded. Well, maybe they are and I don't even know it. That's possible, I suppose. I'm not going to get that fancy. I see I need a stamp block. There we go. Okay, so she uses like a blue, and then the roof kind of with this darkish sepia brown color, I guess. Doesn't really matter. Just go with what we've got here. And the stamp on the block. And then I'm just following kind of what the picture looks like on here. And just taking the marker and coloring it. Again, nothing too fancy. There's some spots where the colors kind of blend together. I like that. All right, color, color, color with the marker. Color this in here. All right. And she's, I don't know where her lines came from in there, but whatever. And then this gets some brown real quick. Right, just kind of coloring all that in. And this particular rubber feels like it dries really fast too, which is interesting, but fine, we can work with all of that. Usually she would have us go and kind of just breathe on it. I'm actually going to use my little spritzer doodad. And just from a distance, I'm going to spray it. There we go. That's probably more water than what I needed. It's kind of been my theme today, hasn't it? More water than what I needed. I think I've said that every time I've started something. But anyway, and then we stamp it on the paper. Okay, and then we take, could be the water brush, could just be a regular brush, and kind of blend out all this. Like she even has, oh, look at that. That's how she did it. She's just pulling the color down. See, look at that. This is just water-based marker. And I can achieve these cool shadows and things just by grabbing the paint, or grabbing the water and the marker and moving it around, right? And these may not be the, well, these are not the exact colors she uses, but it gives us a good kind of starting point, I think. All right, look at that. And this Art Impressions, they do, I think, Watercolor Wednesday with this whole technique and the colors and all that stuff. I've watched some of them before. I haven't watched any lately. I just haven't been doing it. But if you wanted to see somebody doing this more, you could certainly go to there. I think they do it through their Facebook page and watch it. Right, I'm just kind of trying to add some shadow and depth. And if I thought it needed more, I could always, again, put a little bit of the marker on the glass and pick it up that way too. Right, there you go. See, simple kind of watercolor effect. I feel like buildings are a little hard, to be honest. I really like the plants. And I think there's a tree in here. So let's throw the tree in. That's, I think, my favorite. And you can do so many things with these. So this one comes with the fence, the barn, and the tree. You can see in here there's other stuff too. There's grass and other little shrubs and things. So there's more stamps that you could use with this. If you have more sets, she has some base sets that she kind of uses frequently throughout, and she'll use them for different things. Like she might use the grass for any number of different things. I've seen really cool things with the trees and some of the different kind of flowers and stuff that I thought would be cool. But again, I haven't really gotten into like, oh, I must have all this. I just, watercolor isn't generally my always medium, I guess. That's why that's stuck on there. I forgot to put the little Sealy back on. Okay, that's okay. I'll do that later. Okay, so let's do the tree. I'm gonna keep my brown out, and let's get a nice green. Good kind of tree color green in here. It's a nice kind of dark one. Right, and I could put oranges in here if I were going for a fall look. If I was going for a more winter look, it could probably just be the brown, where the branches come out, or even a black or gray would be, I think, really pretty. Right. And she would use probably, I think she has on her, in her base sets too, like a leaf kind of thing, where once she got the skeleton of the tree down, she could put some of the leaves on here too. I'm just going to pull it from the green and see what we can do, because that's what she did on here. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to use the breathe on technique this time instead of the spring. Although the spring didn't work bad, I'm kind of okay with the way the spraying turned out. This era of COVID, it feels like you don't want to breathe your germs on everything, right? Alright, so just a quick look. None of this is fancy. Okay, just colored, and then spray, breathe on it real good. Stamp it down. There we go. Oh, see, that turned out really nice. And then get some water. Not too much, so we'll dab off. Look at that. Nice. And then let's really pull this up more to give us kind of this tree look. And I think she does this like kind of dabby technique like this to give it more of a, it's probably, again, too much water. My phrase for today. But when you do this kind of bop, bop, bop technique, it gives it more of a leafy feel. Again, if I had her kind of leaf and flower stamp, I could make it even more so. But that's not bad at all. Get the excess water off of there. Slow that down a little bit. There we go. Look at that. Not bad. See, now it looks like, you know, I drew and all that stuff by hand, and it was really just some stamps. And I could take more time and make this even better. Right, I could put the fence over here, add some grass. I think one of the, I think I got a set of like 4 sets when I took their class. And I could add some of the grass in too if I wanted. But there you go. And then, you know, initial it because it's my thing. So there we have it. I think we're really out of time. It's like 8:01. I lost my computer part of the way through, but I think this is good. There are other things I thought I'd show that I didn't even have time for, but I thought it was cool. Hopefully, Mom, you got something out of it. Anyone who watched late, hopefully you got something out of it and enjoyed it. I think it was fun. As a reminder, if you watch the recording or the live and you leave a comment, you get entered for Win It Wednesday. The next Win It Wednesday is next week, Wednesday the 17th. I'll do a Try It Tuesday on the 16th, and then Win It Wednesday. You'll win something. It might be one of the things we painted. It might not. It might be last week when I made a journal out of junk. It might be a combination of the two. You just never know. It depends what I get done and what I feel motivated to give. So hopefully you all keep checking in, watching it recorded or live, and hopefully next week we get a few more people. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Good night.